"Oh dear." Mary's voice, my stepmother, sounded loud enough for the people around in the luxurious lobby of the Imperial restaurant to hear. "Your name isn't on the guest list. Maybe you should head to some nearby diner?" I froze in place near the receptionist's desk, feeling how my expensive dress, for which I spent 2 months' salary, suddenly seemed cheap despite the prestigious brand. The receptionist, a young woman with a tablet, looked confused, glancing between me and the smug face of my stepmother. "There must be some mistake," I said in a calm and confident voice. "The invitation clearly said 7 o'clock. Mary's lips curled into that familiar sneering smile I knew and hated all too well. She always smiled like that when she took pleasure in something humiliating. "No mistake. Today is family only." She emphasized the word family so that it was immediately clear to me that I didn't belong in that category. I glanced fleetingly at my father. He was sitting at a large table, engrossed in conversation with my stepbrother John. Mary's relatives and their friends were there too. He hadn't noticed yet what was happening at the entrance. "Dad invited me himself," I repeated insistently, reaching for my bag to show the message on my phone. Mary laughed loudly and said patronizingly, "Your father has been so forgetful lately. We're having dinner to celebrate John's admission to law school, and we don't want to spoil his celebration with your presence. My name is Sarah Jones. I'm 27, and for the last 20 years, I've been the odd one out in my own family. My mother passed away when I was 7. A year later, my father married Mary, who already had her own children, John and Karen. From that moment on, I was gradually and persistently pushed aside. Attention, love, and expensive gifts were given to my stepbrother and stepsister, while I got used to being just a faded shadow on the edge of someone else's happiness. All I ever wanted was to become an equal member, maintain my relationship with my father, and be part of the important events in their lives. But all this time, Mary stood in the way, making sure I never forgot my status as the unwanted reminder of my father's first marriage. "Sarah, don't make a scene," she continued with feigned gentleness. "Today is John's evening. Don't spoil our celebration." Turning back to the table, she left me with an unpleasant feeling of humiliation. I caught the receptionist's sympathetic glance and almost decided to leave when my phone vibrated. It was Jessica, my friend and business partner. "Everything's ready for tomorrow's meeting with Mr. Lanster. He's thrilled with our expansion project." Mr. Lanster was a well-known American restaurateur, owner of a chain of elite restaurants, and tomorrow we were scheduled to meet with him about a collaboration. It was ironic that right now, in one of his restaurants, my own family was publicly humiliating me. I didn't have time to reply to Jessica's message before Mary came over again, her face becoming harsher. "You're still here?" she hissed. "I clearly stated, you should leave. And Father agrees with me. He doesn't want you to ruin our evening with your presence." Those words hurt more than anything else that had been said before. Could it be possible that Father really said that? We used to be incredibly close. After Mom's death, he never left me, dedicating every free moment to our shared activities, movies, park walks, bike rides. Those memories were the most valuable thing left in my life. But with Mary's arrival, everything changed. I gladly accepted her children, hoping to find a family, but quickly realized that my role was clearly defined for Mary. I was supposed to become invisible. At first, Father tried to protect me, but Mary always cleverly turned the situation so that I seemed to simply be whining. Increasingly, he was filled with guilt, but I almost never heard words of support from him. My presence at family gatherings became undesirable, and invitations, if they came, were at the last moment when it was too late to refuse. Despite everything, I graduated from university with honors and, together with Jessica, founded a small marketing agency. While Mary and her children perceived my efforts as insignificant, we gained the trust of a circle of American companies. Business publications started writing about us, and occasionally, Father would meet me for lunch, hiding it from Mary. He looked proud of me, but always asked not to make my achievements known at home. Mary gets upset. Better if we don't talk about it. I got used to accepting this reality and convinced myself that any communication with Father was better than none at all. I believed that someday my achievements would force the family to acknowledge me, but today's situation shattered my illusions. Standing on a cold New York street, I finally let myself cry. The pain of the past 20 years poured out. Jessica's message appeared on the screen again. How did the family dinner go? I didn't even know what to answer her right now. Gazing at the shining sign of the Imperial Restaurant, boasting, "Where moments become memories," I bitterly smirked. This will definitely become a memory, just not the kind their beautiful advertisement promised. Returning to my empty apartment, I suddenly realized that I could no longer pretend we were a typical family with minor problems. The truth was far harsher and more painful. To them, I simply didn't matter. In the morning, I arrived at the office early. On the table was a cold cup of coffee. Slides from the presentation for Mr. Lanster flickered before my eyes. The famous restaurateur with whom we had an important meeting scheduled today. I tried to focus on work to distract from yesterday's humiliation, but my thoughts stubbornly returned to the lavish restaurant hall and to Father, who so calmly turned away from me, as if there weren't those years when I was his only beloved daughter. Jessica, my business partner and friend, who had long become the closest person to me, peeked into the office. "You didn't respond yesterday?" she said gently, placing fresh coffee on my desk. "How was the family dinner?" I looked at her tiredly and briefly recounted everything. Mary publicly refusing to sit with me, my stepbrother's admission celebration without me, and my father's cold, averted gaze. "Your family is something else," Jessica said with indignation after my story, "and Mary is just a monster. Who behaves like that?" "A person who has honed her skills for nearly 20 years. I replied with a bitter smile. "But you know, last night was the last straw for me. I won't let them hurt me. Today's meeting is too important to think about them." Jessica looked at me intently. "Are you sure you're okay?" "Not right now," I admitted to her. "But I'll manage. Promise." 2 hours later, we sat across from Mr. Lanster in his stylish office in downtown New York. Over the past year, our agency had helped him develop marketing and increase restaurant attendance. And now the discussion was about a full partnership with a share in profits, not just advertising campaigns. Mr. Lanster, a stern but fair man, listened to our presentation attentively and with interest. "Your last advertising campaign was very successful," he noted, nodding in our direction. "I'm impressed. Ladies, it's a pleasure working with you." The conversation was going smoothly until Mr. Lanster mentioned the previous evening. "I noticed that you left the restaurant quickly yesterday," he said, addressing me. "Was something wrong?" I felt my heart sink. So he saw me. "Just a small misunderstanding with the guest list," I replied as calmly as possible, trying not to show my concern. "Nothing serious, personal matters." Jessica, noticing my confusion, quickly added confidently, "Family issues, you know how it is." Mr. Lanster looked at me attentively and slightly frowned. "That woman at the entrance who was speaking with you, Is she a relative of yours? She seemed quite unpleasant. Yes, she's my stepmother, I confessed, feeling the wave of humiliation from the memories rise again. It's a long story. He listened carefully and slightly furrowed his brow. I see. Yesterday she seemed very unwelcoming. My sympathies, Sarah. The conversation returned to business matters, and soon Mr. Lanster said he was seriously considering our offer for partnership. Things seemed to be going well but yesterday I had a meeting with another company that also offered very interesting terms. The Jones Financial Group, I believe. Upon hearing that name, I was stunned. Jones Financial Group. That was my father's company, where my stepsister Karen had recently started working. It couldn't have been a mere coincidence. They proposed significant investment into the restaurant chain, Mr. Lanster continued, and spoke very favorably of your agency, but hinted that major investments aren't really your expertise. They were represented by a young woman, Karen Jones, who shares your last name. Inside, I felt cold as I realized what had happened. My stepsister Karen, who openly showed disdain for me and my business, deliberately tried to sabotage our contract while simultaneously acknowledging our work to Mr. Lanster. I promised them I'd think about it, but warned them I'd talk to you first. Mr. Lanster finished, clearly unaware of how deeply his words hurt me. Jessica quickly took the initiative and began asking clarifying questions about the competitor's offer, but I was barely listening to her words. One thought whirled in my head. My family decided to invade even the part I created myself without their involvement. As we left Mr. Lanster's office, Jessica squeezed my hand and said firmly, "Don't worry. We'll find a way to convince him to stay with us. Everything will be okay." At that moment, my phone vibrated and I saw a message from Dad. I heard you had a meeting today with Mr. Lanster. Karen mentioned your company handles his marketing. How small the world is. Proud of you, daughter. The message, which made no mention of yesterday's humiliation, not the slightest note that his other daughter was literally sabotaging my business, was the last straw for me. All my lingering fears and hopes that one day Dad would understand everything and stand by me vanished at once. Now I knew for sure. That day would never come. This is no longer just business, I said to Jessica with firmness I'd never felt before. Now it's a matter of principle. I won't let them humiliate me again. Returning to the office, I knew for sure. It would be not just a battle for a contract, but a struggle for my dignity and the right to not let my family hurt me again. We returned to the office and immediately got to work. Together with Jessica, we started gathering information about the proposal my stepsister Karen had made to Mr. Lanster on behalf of my father's company. The more we learned, the clearer it was that the division responsible for the restaurant business had recently appointed Karen as head, and she decided to use her authority to strike a deal with Lanster, solidify her position within the company, and simultaneously hit me hard. It seems your sister deliberately encroached on our business to prove to Dad and her mother how great she is, Jessica summarized while scanning documents on her laptop screen. What a piece of work! I felt growing inside me not just anger, but a sense of acute injustice. Everything I achieved, I did it myself, without any help from the family, despite their indifference and constant humiliation. I was used to living in constant anticipation of my father's approval, which never came, and now even in the one area where I could be independent, they decided to reach into. At that moment, an email from Mr. Lanster's assistant appeared on my phone screen, requesting a follow-up meeting tomorrow to clarify some details of our offer. That might be a good sign. Jessica said cautiously. He seemingly isn't rushing to accept their proposal. Later that same evening, I received an unexpected call from an unknown number. It was Mr. Lanster's assistant, a young man named Andrew, whom we had met several times during the filming of promotional videos.
"Sarah, I apologize for disturbing,"
he said hesitantly.
"I overheard a conversation today. I think you should know about it."
It turned out Karen and Mary had returned to see Lanster and demanded he immediately make a decision in favor of their proposal. When Lanster said he was meeting with us again, Mary sarcastically remarked, "Sarah's little firm barely stays afloat. She always loved to exaggerate her accomplishments, just like her late mother." I felt my breath catch. Mary rarely mentioned my mother, but when she did, it was always with contempt, aiming to crush even the memory.
"And that's not all,"
Andrew continued, clearly troubled about having to tell me such things. "They showed Lanster financial documents supposedly proving your company is drowning in debt and couldn't handle such a project."
"What?"
I barely breathed, feeling indignation swelling anew. "That's utter nonsense! We are financially stable."
"I thought so,"
Andrew confirmed.
"It seemed to me
Lanster wasn't inclined to believe them either, but be prepared for tomorrow's conversation. When the call ended, I relayed everything to Jessica. Her frustration was palpable. "They've totally lost their minds," she exclaimed. "They're committing fraud, fabricating documents. Maybe we should sue them?" "Possibly," I sighed deeply. "But convincing Lanster not to accept their offer is more important right now. We need to act carefully and prove they're trying to discredit us." The next day, we arrived at Lanster's office, fully prepared to push back. I was bracing myself for a difficult conversation, anticipating he'd pose uncomfortable questions about our financial situation. But to my surprise, he greeted us warmly, as if nothing had happened with my family the day before.
"I've carefully reviewed your proposal,"
he began as he invited us to sit in comfortable chairs.
"Your idea of partnering and growing the chain with me is very appealing."
I was tensely anticipating when he would mention my family and their offer, but he continued.
"Yesterday,
I also received an official offer from Jones Financial Group." Upon opening the folder, I saw Karen's project. They intended to transform Lanster's restaurants into a network of mid-range establishments with a completely different format, obliterating the prestigious brand Mr. Lanster had long built.
"They claim that you and Karen are old friends and would love to see her running such a project,"
he said, with a slight note of doubt in his voice. "Friends?" I could barely speak from indignation and anger. "Mr. Lanster, Karen is my stepsister, and she knew perfectly well we were collaborating with you. It's an outright lie and an attempt to discredit me." Lanster's face revealed genuine surprise. "So the woman from the restaurant is your stepmother, and Karen is her daughter? Now things make more sense." I briefly explained the entire story to him, including their attempt to falsify our financial documents and Karen's goal to destroy our partnership.
"To be honest, their offers seemed suspicious to me from the start," he admitted. "The numbers in their documents don't match reality. I know the value of my business, which is why I want to propose a different option to you. I'm planning to retire in a few years, and my children have no interest in the restaurant business. I need partners who can grow and preserve my brand. I'm offering you and Jessica the opportunity to gradually buy out a share in my business, starting with 30% now and increasing to full control over time." Hearing this took my breath away. It was more than I ever imagined and far beyond our initial request. "Why us?" Jessica cautiously asked. "Because you're talented, honest, and respect what I've built," Lanster said earnestly, looking me in the eyes. And honesty is a rare commodity these days.
When we were alone, Jessica and I couldn't contain our joy and excitement. It wasn't just a business deal, it was a true victory over those who had long and deliberately humiliated and ignored me. However, I realized that now this had become a personal matter. It was time to show my family that their attempts to belittle and destroy me had failed, and instead made me stronger and more confident. Back at the office, we immediately got to work. Preparing for the deal with Mr. Lanster demanded all our time. Now before us was the massive task of developing a financial plan, enlisting a bank for partial financing of the restaurant share purchase. But I still couldn't shake the thoughts about my family and their schemes. As if sensing this, my phone vibrated again with a new message. On the screen was my father's name. Sarah, Karen is having a small family celebration for her successes at the company. Maybe you won't feel comfortable after that dinner, but your sister would be glad if you came to support her. It felt like icy water was poured over me. The family decided to hold their celebration at the Imperial Restaurant again. Clearly, Karen was so confident in her victory that she planned to publicly announce her success without even waiting for Mr. Lanster's official agreement. Looking at this message, I felt determination rising within me. Now I knew for sure. It was time to put an end to this long-running story of humiliation and injustice. I showed Jessica the message, and she smirked sarcastically. Of course, your sister is always quick to proclaim herself the winner. What will you reply? I think I should go, I said calmly. You're serious? Jessica looked at me in surprise. That's exactly why, I replied firmly. I need to close this chapter once and for all. But first, I want to talk to Mr. Lanster and ask him for a favor. The next day, I met with Mr. Lanster. I explained the situation and requested his permission to disclose our partnership during the upcoming event, which had been kept secret thus far. Mr. Lanster listened attentively, then nodded approvingly. Sometimes justice needs to be public, Sarah. I understand how important this is for you, and I authorize you to disclose our agreement at the appropriate moment. I'd be glad if it happens that way. The day of the event arrived. This time I entered the Imperial in a strict, elegant black dress, feeling an inner confidence I never had before. At the entrance, the familiar receptionist greeted me. She seemed a bit surprised to see me and quickly remarked, Sarah Jones, your family is already gathered at the table. Would you like me to escort you? Thank you. I can manage myself, I replied serenely and headed into the hall. At the large table, my relatives and several guests sat. Father looked as usual, lost and tense. Mary noticed me first. Her face changed for a moment, but she quickly regained her usual smug smile. Sarah, what a surprise! She exclaimed loudly. You decided to delight us after all. We prepared a small separate table for you so you'd feel comfortable. I felt the guests' gazes on me and again felt my face flush with the heat of humiliation, but I immediately regained composure. Thank you, Mary, but I won't need a separate table, I said confidently and calmly. Mary slightly raised an eyebrow and her voice turned cold. Dear, I insist. After all, this is a special evening for Karen, and we wouldn't want anyone feeling awkward. Quiet chuckles echoed around the table. Karen sat with a smug smile, clearly savoring the moment. Awkward questions I don't understand? I calmly queried, stepping forward. All eyes now focused on me. I took a deep breath and spoke loudly enough for everyone at the table to hear. I think we should clarify something with the owner of this establishment first. Mary chuckled. Mr. Lanster doesn't handle seating matters,
but if you want to catch his attention, you're free to try, though I wouldn't advise it." "I was not referring to Mr. Lanster," I replied steadily. At that moment, Mr. Lanster himself approached our table, accompanied by the receptionist and the restaurant manager. "Good evening, Sarah Jones," he greeted me warmly. Then he turned to the receptionist. "Is the table for our partner ready?" "Everything as requested," the receptionist replied, gently smiling at me. An eerie silence fell over the table. Mary paled, and Karen stopped smiling, staring at me in utter confusion. "What's going on here?" Father slowly asked, moving his gaze between me and Mr. Lanster. I took another step forward and calmly addressed Mary and Karen. "I would like to officially introduce everyone to my new business partner, Mr. Lanster. Last week, we signed an agreement through which my company became co-owners of the Imperial restaurant chain, and if I'm not mistaken, this dinner is being held in one of my restaurants." The shock on my relatives' faces was priceless. Mary dropped her glass, which shattered noisily on the floor. Karen was speechless, only opening and closing her mouth, unable to utter a word. "But that's impossible," she finally stammered. "Our deal with you. Your offer was declined a week ago," Mr. Lanster interjected gently but firmly. "I prefer working with honest people." "Sarah, you didn't tell me anything," Dad suddenly spoke, appearing both bewildered and guilty. "I suppose you've never really inquired what's happening in my life, Dad?" I quietly asked, looking directly into his eyes. "It's too late to change anything now. I just wanted you to know that this story is over." I turned and made my way towards the exit, leaving behind the astonished faces of my family. For the first time in many years, I felt completely free from the weight of humiliation and unmet expectations. Outside, Jessica was already waiting in her car. As soon as I sat in the passenger seat, she looked at me with concern and asked, "Well, how did it go? Are you okay?" I took a deep breath, feeling the tension of the last few days and years finally release. "You know, Jess, it went exactly as I dreamed," I said with relief and smiled for the first time in a long while. "I think they'll remember for a long time that I'm no longer their victim." We both laughed, and Jessica started the engine. As we drove away from the Imperial, I didn't look back. I no longer needed validation or acceptance from the family that ignored and belittled me for so many years. Today I gained something far more important, my own dignity and the confidence that I'm moving in the right direction. The next morning, I awoke feeling unusually light and peaceful. Of course, the sting from yesterday's conversation with Dad hadn't fully disappeared, but for the first time, I sensed a clear boundary between the past and the present. Ahead lay a daunting task involving our new business partnership with Mr. Lanster, and I chose to immerse myself entirely in that. However, the phone reminded me of the past again. On the screen appeared a message from Dad. "Sarah, we need to talk seriously. I didn't know it would go this far. Forgive me, if you can." I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling a mix of pain, regret, and some bitterness. Deep down, I knew Dad was sincere, but forgiving him felt like an impossibly hard step. Instead of replying immediately, I set the phone aside and headed to work. The office was buzzing with activity. Our entire team was thrilled about the contract signing with the Imperial restaurant chain. Now, we faced a massive task of restructuring our agency to handle the new demands. Jessica was already preparing bank documents, while I worked on a new strategy for developing the restaurant chain. Yet, thoughts of family wouldn't completely leave my mind. That evening, I dialed my father's number.
He answered immediately, as if waiting for the call.
"Sarah," he said, with a note of guilt in his voice. "Forgive me. I really didn't think things would turn out this way. Mary always insisted you were just exaggerating your grievances, and I didn't want any more conflicts. I'm sorry for everything." I listened to his words, understanding that deep within, I felt no anger or resentment, just a quiet sadness over missed years. "Dad," I said softly, "I forgave you a long time ago. I just don't want to return to the past anymore. I don't blame you for what happened, but I can't continue justifying it either. You chose your path with Mary, and I respect that. Now I have my own path." On the other end, there was silence for a long time. Then he spoke quietly. "I understand, dear. I'm very sorry about how everything turned out. But I'm proud of you, even if I never said it directly. You achieved everything yourself, and I'm glad for you." His words brought a lump to my throat, and I felt tears running down my cheeks. Now, when I no longer awaited these words, they rang profoundly painful, yet simultaneously freeing. It felt as though I had closed an important chapter in my life. I realized forgiving my father was necessary, not for him, but for myself. Now, I could move forward without looking back or waiting for the impossible. In the months that followed, Jessica and I immersed ourselves completely in our project. The Imperial restaurant chain began to grow and flourish. Mr. Lanster gradually withdrew from management, increasingly entrusting decisions to us. Our agency soon evolved into a successful business, attracting investors and media attention. My father's family no longer attempted to interfere with my life. Karen left Dad's company after her proposal to Mr. Lanster failed, and Mary reportedly endured several humiliating moments when friends and acquaintances learned the whole story. One evening, after a successful restaurant launch, Jessica and I sat in a cozy cafe, enjoying a warm summer evening and discussing our future plans. My phone buzzed with a message from Dad. "Sarah, I don't expect you to reply immediately, but know that I'm always ready to talk and meet. I'm happy you're successful and happy." I read the message and smiled. This time, I responded right away. "Thank you, Dad. Maybe someday we'll meet and truly talk. For now, I just want to live my life. Take care." Sending the message, I felt an overwhelming sense of calm within. I no longer felt like a hostage to expectations, humiliation, and past grievances. Now my life was solely mine. And now, speaking to you, dear listener, I want to say one thing. Never let anyone determine your worth or place in life, even if it's your own family. Sometimes you have to go through pain and humiliation to understand a simple truth. You are worth exactly what you value yourself. And if someone isn't ready to accept that, just let them go. Because true strength lies in the ability to move forward, no matter what. I have unequivocally closed this chapter of my life. Before me lay new paths and opportunities, and I certainly knew that I would never again let anyone doubt my worth. Did you like the story? Write your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next interesting story. See you tomorrow.